So AI Risk Assistant, that is our AIRA tool that actually delivers on a end-to-end solution for risk management, leveraging AI and AI functionalities. Over here, you've got three logos over here. That's AIRA, that's our AI risk engine. The Sysrisk, the platform where all of this is actually hosted on, and Sysonex, the organization. I always like to provide a little background image here. So I want to say that in the phase of billions years of evolution, the egg is the most unique structure that actually saves life, preserves life, and allows life to be continued. And increasingly, when human beings came into play, we created further structure. This is your humble egg carton, where it actually is further preserved, further maintained, simply for the perspective from a value. So guess what? Risk management is always value driven, and we preserve not only life, but also assets, also wealth, reputation, etc. So that's why we tend to do risk management. So Sysonex is a next generation technology company, and our flagship platforms are SysRisk, SysIncident, SysAudit, built on a common GRC experience. And we use AIRA, our AI engine, to deliver AI-driven insights, workflow automation, real-time visibility. So the risk management landscape is changing. It's changing due to the very demands and pressures of external entities as well as internal organizational entities. There's a need for performance. There's a need for delivery. There's a need for better visualization throughout the entire organization. So risk management as a discipline is gradually evolving. So before, where there was minimal oversight and some people involved, before there was limited involvement, only few practice leads, before it was not data driven, before there was limited accountability, before there was limited insight. But now we're actually really seeing that more and more we want all of this. We want all of this not only to drive risk management as a capability, but also to drive the betterment of the practices for our own organization. And in all of these cases, the important player in today's world is definitely AI. AI can deliver on better, larger, faster oversight. AI can ensure continuous involvement and engagement. AI delivers on data-driven insights and views and value. AI is ensuring accountability. AI is ensuring insights for the organization. So that's where things are actually changing. I want to take you to this next slide. So I know that there's lots of frameworks out there for different organizations, and no one size fits all. But what we have looked at over the years working with our clients is that there's three common questions that is being asked again and again. Who does something within the risk management workflow? What do they do and how do they do it? So the workflow really results in who does it is really your frontline staff, your business stakeholder, your risk analyst, your risk monitor, your risk manager, and finally the corporate board. And if you notice if it's from bottom to top, it goes this way. If it's top to bottom, it also, again, corporate board, your CRO, risk manager, or line manager, line of business manager, your analyst, business stakeholder, and your line staff. And at any point of time, there's this three eyes view, and that three eyes view can be around these three, can be these three, or even these three. So that's how the world of risk has been. And what they're doing, and I've said this repeatedly, is that what you're really doing is collecting and aggregating data and after aggregating and collecting that data, what you're providing is risk oversight, risk view. So from the front line, you're actually collecting the data, you're articulating the risk from a business stakeholder perspective and how it impacts your project, how it impacts your line of business or your particular process activity. The risk analyst is looking at the individual risk item itself. The risk managers are looking at controls that are in place, with the chief risk officer looking at risk dashboards, risk reporting, and risk insights. And finally, the corporate board is looking at risk appetite, risk management, and direction. So if you notice, all of these flows are also tied with RCSA, where every individual, every role is really involved, both bottom up as well as both top down, delivering on this. But really, it starts with either collecting the data or delivering a strategy from a risk appetite and risk management direction. So how do they do this? Well, they're loading data, entering data, they're finding your data, they're establishing and working with the controls, they're ensuring data fidelity, they're monitoring the risk register, they're tracking risk, seeing how the risk is actually progressing, who's entering the data tied to the risk, monitoring and prioritizing it, review risk as they're triaged. They're improving the risk or the risk data entry quality. The risk resolution, self-assessment is going on, and that's where a lot of line managers come into play with RCSA. They're visualizing, aggregating, and monitoring the risk. And then finally, the corporate board is again also visualizing, governing and strategizing, as well as overseeing risk management maturity for the organization. So this is your flow within a framework, and you can build out processes as many ways that you want. So if this is risk management and RCSA and built in the way that is working in different organization, what we've also noticed is this particular blueprint, this architectural view, where every organization is delivering on risk governance and oversight, risk identification, risk assessment and analysis, risk treatment and control management, risk monitoring and reporting, strategy, performance and decision support, compliance and regulatory risk, operational resilience, technology, data and cyber risk, third-party ecosystem risk culture awareness and enablement, risk data analytics and AI, risk technology integration, and automation. So these are your what you might call them as attribute layer, where all of these risk entities and elements and functionalities are coming into play. This provides the capability layer that shows risk governance and oversight, has risk governance, risk appetite, board executive oversight, 3 lines model enablement, and enterprise risk identification, third-party risk identification. I will not go through all of these, but we'll send our white paper to you guys, so you also can see this, and we'll also send our PowerPoint presentation to you also. You have this to share with your colleagues and friends. But the blue dots are important here. The blue dots really show that all of these areas have an opportunity of enabling and allowing AI to come into play. And that's where we're really trying to work. Third-party ecosystem risk monitoring, risk treatment, technology data, cyber risk assessment, operational resilience, compliance, regulatory risk identification. All of these have tie-in to the world of artificial intelligence. Risk technology and integration. So this is more of infrastructure development, risk culture awareness, as well as risk data analytics. This is really the infrastructure upon which all of this is actually hosted upon. I want to go to this next slide, and that is risk control self-assessment. This is the topic that we really want to discuss. And why is it regarded so hard? Stats from Deloitte shows that roughly about 75% organizations globally will always do risk control self-assessment in some form of way, built on their risk culture or their risk appetite for the organization. And the observation also is that while we do have 75% of companies performing on risk control self-assessment, similarly, when a list of tasks for your frontline as well as your executives are requested to see which one is most complicated and which one is most worrisome, they always mention RCSA. So why is it so hard? So first of all, the observation is that there's discrete operational risk exposure. You might have, so any small, medium company, if we consider even for large companies for that matter, you might have like, at any given time, 10 to 15 or more projects that are running. If every single project has roughly about 10, risk or 15 risk that is tied to it, you're looking at 150 plus right away. And that number keeps on growing based on the areas of concern that you're looking at. So, um, a mid-sized organization can have anywhere from hundreds to thousands across the organization. Now, this limits the granularity and what the resolution has been from different organizations. And you know what? Let's actually focus on some of the risk. So let's not report on all of the risk for our operational risk exposure or for our enterprise risk exposure to deliver on RCSA. Let's really focus on a select set of risk, but that does not deliver the value that we're trying to deliver, where we're saying all risks are considered, all risks are looked at for the sake of risk management and RCSA. Information overloading. Just the very fact that we went through these number of slides, now we are having to go through a lot of information, process it on real-time basis. So too much information, too few people, and too little interest by the time the RCSA report is published. The organization has already moved on, and it's hard to identify if the risk is current for today. And that's a issue that we see. After 6 or 7 months or even a year's worth of work, if you're a very large organization, you have your RCSA, but you're really reporting on risk that was last year's, risk that was 6, 7 months ago. So how we've tried to resolve that is, let's work on the risks that are tied with strategy, and ensure strategy is delivered. So none of these resolutions are filling your appetite that, what, I feel happy when, in case of information overloading, when I have these concerns, this is the resolution. It's almost like it's between a rock and a hard place. So you're not winning, you're not gaining. As in Canada, you'd say you're not moving the hockey puck closer to the goalpost. So process or event. So most RCSA are event driven. Some RCSA are process driven. And successful RCSA are more and more process driven. But the resolution has been that let's create a large, massive number of these process maps for the entire organization. As an architect, I've been involved in a number of these activities, and you know how difficult it is to create process maps for an organization. The process that you created today, it becomes invalid in about a few months' time. And on top of that, not all processes are captured well. Some processes are hidden, and some processes are very hard to actually even log or create it within the process flow. So those are hidden shadow processes that where a colleague is, sharing the file with another colleague or sending emails to ensure that the activity or task is done. So you really can't create a detailed process map to deliver this all. RCSA might be designed top down or bottom up completion. We just mentioned just a while ago, okay, you can do this top down from strategy from the board side all the way down to the analyst, the frontline person. At the same time, you can also do it from frontline person all the way up to the board. So the issues around this, the concerns around this, RCSA, our colleagues have decided we can deliver both top-down and bottom-up approach, and also don't forget the documented templates. So as you realize, this entire activity, there's a reason why it is so time consuming. There's a reason why that it is so thorough, that is required, and because it impacts the appetite and the risk threshold for the organization, we can't just suddenly start finding little gaps and the little corners to cut. Rather, we have to go through the entire process to deliver on the value that we're looking for. Finally, all of RCSA activity is tied with workshops, and I've seen workshops conducted in some of our organizations and vendor organizations meetings, and it is difficult to secure executive support. It is difficult to identify different category of SMEs, difficult to plan ahead, difficult to facilitate well, and ensure you can conduct good workshops. The very fact that somebody asks a question in a meeting about the likelihood or a concern of a particular risk, why this risk is even involved, or why this risk has been categorized in a specific category, often derails the entire discussion. And we see that play out regularly, repeatedly throughout our organization. So again, these are some of the concerns, like really highlighted concerns with RCSA. These are some of the concern contexts, and these are the resolution that some of our colleagues are practicing right now out in the industry, and yet there's no huge satisfaction with the resolution that is presented here. This brings me to this next slide. And this next slide is that this only gets harder because this resolution now need to go through the RCSA steps, where you need to identify and document, you need to assess and analyze, you need to control, define, and implement, you need to have control testing and assessment done, you need to issue identification and corrective action, all the while you're using templates and delivering on dashboards. So guess what? Yes, it is a 6 months to a year's worth of manual intensive labor that might be done by 2 or 3 of our colleagues. And at the end, after all of this hard work, after all of this effort, as a risk manager, as a risk director, we are when we show this as, okay, that's good, thank you, let's move on. But you realize the effort and the energy that went into it. You realize that none of these activities are easy. So what I wanted to share with you guys is that it can be easy. It can be done better. And that better can be done with the aid of a solution. And that solution really is the Sysonex platform, where we have built-in risk identification, documentation, risk assessment and analysis, control definitions and implementation, control testing and assessment, issue identification and corrective action. This is already built in. So Sysonex has all of these things built in, and there's more. And the areas of risk resolution that we just talked about, I just want to share about limited granularity, about work on risks that are tied to strategy, create detailed process maps, deliver both top-down, up-down. So secure executive support. What we have replaced this is with ongoing, continuous availability of information and communication. So it's not a once in a lifetime, once in a year event. It's not both top down and bottom up. Rather, you actually build it within your regular activities. You don't need to create the process maps for the entire organization. Rather, you have a framework that actually looks at who, why, and how. The Chevron framework that we just talked about, and everybody knows who is supposed to do what, because the system itself ensures that that's the only capability that you have. Work on risks that are tied to the strategy. So this is that top down, where we have strategy and risk also aligned, and ensure that limit granularity. So we don't have to limit granularity. We can have all of our risks in a single page, single location, and continuously deliver on that. So that brings me to this slide, and that is empower your enterprise, identify risk, resolve non-compliance, and drive seamless innovation. This is exactly what our colleagues entrust us with on a regular basis. This is exactly what they want us to do. Yet, despite all the effort and energy, we are constantly impacted by our inability to identify risks, by our inability to resolve non-compliance, by our inability to drive innovation. So how does Sysrisk do this? This is what you get when you actually just log in into your own Sysrisk profile, and this is almost like designed closely like your Microsoft Office tool, where when you log in, you just really get your profile, you get your account settings, you get your account settings, you get your subscriptions, group membership, activity timeline, support center, etc. But I want to go over the items around the RCSA steps. And if we go to enterprise risk management, this is the module that we're really talking about today. So enterprise risk management allows, while these informations are really good, but it has the ability to enter and identify risk cues. So you can identify risk items. Okay, you can identify risk items, and these are all, if you notice, they're all in a draft mode. And the objective when they're in a draft mode is actually to say, you know what, I've got this risk, I've added some information, and I'm going to have a risk owner, risk assigned to, and some risk monitored by an individual. There's a likelihood score, impact severity, there's a potential damage cost, there's a mitigation cost. If you save this risk, you can actually continue with it. But this is not really a risk until it goes into your risk register. This is not a risk when it's actually in your head. This is a risk that is really on scrap paper. But once you've actually saved it, you can actually save this risk and ask for approval. Once you've saved a risk and asked for approval, it actually goes into the queue. And that queue is where your 3 lines of business, or sorry, your 3I or 3 individuals who are looking at based on organizational hierarchy can come in, participate, and have a discussion on whether this particular risk is actually ready or should actually be looked at. So if you notice, that specific risk, we categorize it within technical risk and reputational risk. And we can now, either within a team or within a team, we can actually discuss about this particular risk information, or we can actually send it to our director, who can either approve this risk, who can request for changes, who can reject it. So this is your risk identification and documentation, and this is really a risk approval. So if your director does not approve it and it rejects it, then it goes and becomes your, an idea that you thought but did not get approved. The director can also request for changes, saying, please update the dollar numbers. Thanks. And request for changes. So this goes into the risk entry queue again. And if you notice it, you have this note. And again, here you are, instead of like soliciting risk items from every single team. You're in real time working with a particular risk, and this is tied with risk identification and documentation, that particular phase within the RCSA. And you have the note, you can look at it, you can then review it, you can actually update it. And once, apologies, once it's updated, you can again send it to the risk approval queue. It gets, and you can actually approve that risk. It's approved. Once it gets approved, guess what? Any and every individual that was tied to this actually gets the risk item, and you have a unique risk item right over here. So that's a very important number there, because now you have something in the risk register that you've actually created and you've actually initiated for your own organization. So this is that particular risk, I believe, 19th February, yes, 6:45 a.m. And you can go over here and you can start looking at it, edit risk item, upload document, risk control. Not only that, you can actually copy this. And once you copy this, you can actually share this within your Slack, within your Teams meeting to the rest of your friends. And you can actually, start a timer and start working at it. So guess what? It actually provides you with your 7 days log. It can provide you with your 15 days log, but we just started, so it's 7 days, 15 days, 1 month, 6 months, it's all the same. You can actually download this log and have that log available. You can start, adding notes to this. Just started working on this today. Looking to work with everyone. And you can add a note. So that's how it goes right over there. But this is that risk that we mentioned. And now, the very idea of adding documentation, you can upload any documentation that is tied to this particular category. So this category is technical risk. You can add a title, you can add a document category tied to that. You can add a reviewer, and you can drag and drop, and it will actually show you all the documents tied to that. Based on that, you can also start creating risk controls. And we're just going to go in, because for every single risk, you can actually come up with a risk control. So if we go back to this risk, depends on third-party cloud, can trigger cross-border outages, causing SLA breaches and revenue loss. So what you can actually do, ensure cloud platform, data center location review is performed. So that's your control name, control description. You can add some control tags to it. Cloud platform review. You can also look at mitigation effectiveness, fully applied, implementation status, control frequency. So now you're really building this particular control. Once this control is actually built out, you can utilize the aid of AI to say, you know what, I had a lower inherent risk. I am actually going to change it. And that will actually impact your residual and your post-control impact likelihood. So we just go over there, and within the same item, as we are working on this one, we realize that probably it is a little bit higher risk than we actually have provided here. So likely, and let's put it moderate, and let's save this risk. As soon as you save this risk, guess what? That log is actually updated right over here. So it's not like, oh, I just did this work and that information is gone. I don't really know what discussions I had. No, it's actually being logged, and this log is staying for 7 years of the life of your of this particular risk. So you can even download this log. And let me try to go to the download location. Hopefully it opens up the folder. And yes, and let me just open up in this browser just once. And again, this is that information. So you can actually send this information to your colleagues. And again, you have that number, that risk number. So now it actually has a risk number. It's not some arbitrary information. It has a risk number tied to your organization now. And that's what we really want, that all risk is cataloged and data is collected well. So I'm going to close the screen again. And again, we're going through the entire activity of risk identification and documentation. And we never say that it's going to be, easy on pen and paper, but you realize how easy it can be on your own on a tool. But at the same time, you can copy this path and you can send it to your colleagues, and they themselves can also start working at it. So there's really cross collaboration. Risk is not a individual activity. It's definitely a team sport where it's the team that actually makes everything possible. I'm going to close this. So now that you actually have your risk items, so risk assessment and analysis. And again, we have all of these workflow right over here. So risk assessment and analysis. So we did a bit of risk assessment. So now we're actually going to the analysis phase as part of RCSA. So now we're not storing a risk, one risk. It's not like aggregating and going to 10 people to say, could you tell me what your risks are? Could you tell me what the views that we have? So you can categorize based on your organization environmental risk, political risk, financial, reputational, technical, operational, business, and pure risk. I think in this case, we only had two categories of risk that was provided here. So I believe environment was definitely one of them. And you can then now start filtering things out. Technical risk was one of them. We didn't have ORM, pure risk. So there you go. So you can now look at, I want to see, because your company focused on say, environmental and sustainable and growth ESG areas. So you can look at your environmental risk, technical risk. You can look at the risks that have been initiated, and that will provide you with a view. You can look at the risks that are in execution mode. You can look at the risks that are resolved. You can look at items that are blocked, things that have been cancelled, or things that have been partially closed, and things that have been closed altogether. This is like null. So now you can say, has it been partially closed? What about cancelled, blocked, resolved? And you see there's lots that's been resolved. So this now gives you a view of activities and things that have really happened. And this is tied with risk assessment and analysis. The view that we showed for RCSA, where you need to have risk identification, guess what? It's present. The view that we showed about risk assessment analysis, so this is present, where it allows you to do risk prioritization and risk analysis. From here, we want to go to control definition and implementation. So when you're looking at control definition and implementation, I just want to go through this presentation again from AODA perspective, which is assistance and visualization. So all of these are AODA compliant, and if you notice, it's easy to read, easy to view, easy to visualize. This itself is also easy. You can look at the critical risk. It takes you straight to that individual item. You can look at your moderate risk. It takes you straight to that item. You can look at the items that are tied with impact, likelihood, and score and see that these are the items, and it'll straight take you right over there. You can look at from a device short your impact cost perspective and a mitigation cost perspective. And finally, you can really pinpoint on that specific item, and you can say, oh, this is the edit risk item. Let's actually work on it today. And you can always in the execution mode, you can always add notes added today during discussion with risk management team. Add note, and guess what? This was the last bit. And if you notice, 6 months ago, we did a lot of work over here, but you realize this is done in 2025, 1224. So guess what? Your logs are there. It's all protected. It's all available. But just today I worked on it. So who worked on it? Why they worked on it? It's readily available, and you can save this item. Once it's saved, again, you go to risk control. You can add a particular control. This one already has a control, which is brilliant because your inherent risk was 8.6.1, and you really reduced, and it went into residual risk, and that is super powerful. And it shows you the view where it was Before it was a major risk, it actually went into a minor risk category, and this is the control that you actually added. Against this control, you can also add further documentation from a control perspective. I'm going to close this guy. So you've gotten all of this. And now we've got control definitions and implementation. I showed you that. Control testing and assessment. Okay, and issue identification and corrective action. So now let's actually use a little bit about this. This is a risk reporting area where you can aggregate and collect the data. So yeah, as you can see, it's part of the overall system, and it's information that's available. But really, and also there's risk closure. So these are all part of. Some are part of the RCSA, some are not. Some are more part of organizational processes. But I want to take you to AI risk assistant. So now that you've actually looked at all the risks that you wanted, you have the ability to look at specific industry sector, crop, and for environmental risk, and you can add keywords, and you can actually do a search. But here's the interesting thing: you can actually search with company information. Or you can actually say, search with company information is where you're really looking at your own organization. So you might be looking at a bank. You're a bank, and you're about to give a loan, and the loan is maybe say in livestock or maybe a loan in crop production. So you can actually identify the risk and place it over here and search for the risk right over here. Or you can actually say, what, this is tied with manufacturing, which you're involved in, manufacturing food products, and you can look at any one of these risk categories, and that will actually provide you. So I'm just going to quickly go to culture and forestry, crop animal production, crop failure likelihood, and I will not provide, crop, and I'll not provide the company information because that company information is the AI bias, or the AI information that we really need to provide and deliver. That's pretty much where we are. So we can do a search, and this search will result in views. We also have discover risk resolution that provides your discovery of risk tied to a particular area and provides a risk item tied to that. We also have the area of risk control. So any particular area that you can actually select, you can actually action it, you can actually view what the controls are tied to it, and you can also search for risk control items tied to that. Okay. So once you've actually got the risk control tied to that, you can then assign this particular risk control again back to the automated risk areas that you've actually been looking at. So now that it's actually working, you can also go to, I don't want to go to RCSA right away, but rather really go to root cause analysis. And okay, we just have that control. So against that, you have all of these AI recommendation: deploy multi-region redundancy, automate failover, enforce enhanced contractual SLAs, etc. So you can accept any one of these, and then they go into your control descriptions. You can then also look at root cause analysis. Root cause analysis for failure of critical third-party provider causing multi-region outage. So again, going back on that, and this is that same item I think we were looking at. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to search for root cause analysis. So right away from a root cause analysis, it will start providing you with all information that actually allows you to visualize the root cause for that entity. So while that's working on, I'm going to take you to strategy risk relationship. So there's a particular strategy. You can actually look at risk relations and identify those risk relations, and it'll actually visualize all of those risk relations. I'll take it to this root cause analysis. Oops, it actually go to select, and we'll just wait for this view, and this view appeared with this particular risk item. Then we go to the, as I mentioned, update risk relations. So you can identify the risk associated with a particular risk and the strategy tied to that. So all of these strategy outcomes are provided over here. So that top to bottom, that view is provided right over here, where you have update strategy items, create the strategy outcome, and list of those outcomes are provided here. And finally, we have the Ask AIRA, where you can actually look at the risk match successfully. You can actually, and these are the risks that are matched successfully, and you can actually, instead of going to your Chat GPT or Anthropic or any other tool that you're using, your colleagues, your staff member, and your executives can simply ask questions to AIRA itself, and then those questions can also be submitted. And this is where the information is provided. You can it goes through one by one all of the questions that you've actually asked for. It provides the answer. You can clear these messages and download the log. You can download the log automatically. It stays for 15 days, 1 month, 6 months, etc. And it provides you with that clarity that who's actually asking the questions what. So now that we've actually gone through RCSA and covered risk identification, risk assessment, control definition, implementation, control testing, and issue identification, I go to the point of going back into our risk prioritization. The risk prioritization is here. You can actually generate the reports. You can generate the report the way that you want to generate it. This entire screen, you can actually capture it, generate a PDF report to say, you know what, this is, I only want to look at our portfolio's environmental risk and exclude all other risk, and I want to generate a report around that. So you have the data, you have the information, and you only want to provide risks that are only executed. And this is the risk that this is the power that you have. We have moderate, major, and critical risks. You have the risk trends, the risk growth in that area, the risk trend creation. You have the heat map, you have the scatter plot around that area that actually shows those specific risk items of concerns. And then finally, you have the view of coastal salinization and information that you're looking at. And that particularly is then provided as 9 records. And all of these 9 records you can then either download and provide to everybody. So this, folks, results in a RCSA activity not done over a period of 6 months, not done within a period of 1 year, not done, say that, okay, we need to have this huge number of people coming in and working together and generate a report after 6 months, but rather the report is generated on the fly, readily available. Your risk register is readily available for everybody to utilize. You can actually download this entire data. And this is the last thing I'm going to show to you guys. Download the entire data from any of these risk items and visualize it for your entire organization. So that ends the issue identification and corrective action, the control testing assessment, the control definitions, the risk assessment analysis. For the templates that we just talked about, those templates are literally like built in. You don't really need to start carrying 10 different templates. You don't really need to start carrying a dashboard. It's already built in, it's already available, and in your homepage you can keep on looking at all the different risks in this common dashboard, also providing you a one-stop view. But at the same time, I want to mention that just as a side note, that while today I just showed you enterprise risk management, we also have project risk management. We also have a compliance risk management, so you can actually look at your active framework, your framework library, your internal framework, your list of clauses, etc. You can start looking at it, and that also helps you in your compliance areas. And you have admin modules that actually allows you to look at your users, admin user groups, current billing amount that you're being charged, visualize that, and not only that, you can go to your company settings, and from there you can actually update your company info, company profile, and based on these profile items, you can actually update any one of these, regulatory requirements and actually complete that. And then finally, your onboarding status. You've got onboarding completed, company strategy items. So this is what I really want to show you guys at the end of the day, that using a enterprise risk management tool, using Sysrisk platform, leveraging AIRA, which is our AI risk assistant, you can do RCSA swiftly, fastly, and efficiently.